Welcome back. It is time for another edition of Silver and Black today as we run down a recap of the Raiders and Chiefs on Black Friday. Boy, what a tough game for the Raiders as they lose in an ugly way. But man, what a spirited effort by Las Vegas out in Kansas City. They lose 19-17. We're going to get into the whole game. We're going to get you the voice of the fan as well with our good friend Murph from Raiders Fan Radio, who joins me in the post-game shows. But a reminder, we are an Odyssey Sports Original podcast, so please do us a favor. Wherever you get your audio, go subscribe. We're also heard on the radio on Sundays in Las Vegas on 101.5 KDON, as well as 98.5 The Bet. So you'll be hearing us there as well. Do us a favor as well. Make sure you check out the folks at BetUS. In fact, not only that, we're going to give you 150% sign-up bonus. That's right. You go bet with BetUS. When you sign in, use the promo code YouTube150. That's YouTube150. You're going to get 150% sign-up bonus up to $2,000. So get that in for this weekend's action as well. All right, Scott and Murph back with you. Raiders get their 10th loss of the season. They are now 0-5 in the AFC West. But some good things coming out of this game. I know the way it ended, everything. We're going to get into it all. But I will tell you that you have to be happy about, and this is where I want to start with you, Murph, with the voice of the fan. You've got to be happy, not with the loss. Every loss sucks. Even those people who want to tank for a draft pick, losing is never easy, especially when it's the Chiefs. But I got to tell you, I was impressed with how this team played. You got to give credit to Antonio Pierce for keeping his team in the game as far as mentally prepared. You also have to give each individual guy on that squad in the silver and black credit because they don't quit. And, it'd be very easy at 2-9 to go into a big game like this and just quit. And they fought to the very end. And while there's no moral victories in the NFL, it is good to see that these guys are out there competing and really doing everything they can to win this game. And they almost got to the point, almost put themselves in the position to win it, Murph.
Yeah, and for anybody that's out there, the embrace the tank crowd, or the suck for Sanders and all that stuff, man. Like every time I go into a Raider game, I'm always rooting for the Raiders to win first and foremost. I would never root for the Raiders to lose. And while I understand that there are implications for the future Raiders, I'm worried about the Raiders that are, not the Raiders that aren't. So when I go into watching a game like tonight for Black Friday, the odds are stacked against us. According to our coach's words, we got one of the worst teams in football going against one of the best teams in football, if not the best team in football. And we hung with them and we had them on the ropes. And so, being that it is that one particular team that wears those McDonald's uniforms, I know we're on the radio, so I'll save any of the foul language, but I'll just say intercourse the Chiefs, first and foremost and always. It's still the darn Chiefs, and we never want to see the Chiefs beat the Raiders, but there was a lot of positivity. And so Scott, and I know we'll get into it, but so I'll keep my comments brief. But when you look at the overall of this football team, this is the first inspired performance that we've seen in a hot minute. And I don't know if that's because it was prime time. I don't know if that's because the realization that jobs are on the line, or that, whether that's being on the coaching staff or potentially even front office, or certainly players, which is highly volatile for players. I don't know what the motivating factor was. At the end of the day, as a fan, it doesn't matter. We finally got to see our Raiders compete at a high level. I say all the time that sometimes when you watch a Raider game in the early time slot, and then you watch the Bills and I don't know, whoever, or the Chiefs or whatever, one of the more elite teams in the NFL, sometimes it's like watching a different sport. It's like you're watching them play and you're like, why can't our team do stuff like that? Well, tonight our team did do stuff like that. We saw some elite plays. Yeah, we saw some boneheaded mistakes. We saw some boneheaded mistakes on the field and on the sidelines, which I'm sure we'll get into all that. But in terms of as just kind of wrap it all up, there are no moral victories. Yes, it sucks to lose to the Chiefs. Yes, I understand that for anybody that's looking forward to or looking, on to next year, that you may feel a certain kind of way about that. But at the end of the day, as a fan, I thought it sucked because the Raiders had a chance to win against our arch rival at the end in their crib. And unfortunately, we got let down in that sense.
Yeah, and I totally understand that. But I'm going to start first with the positives, because there's a lot of positives that came out of this game, especially offensively. I think we saw still some frustration and still some limitations, I think, with this offense and where it's been. But for what Scott Turner has done with Norv Turner, I thought this game you saw a little more. It took a little while. I wish they would have gone vertically early right? We saw the big play to Tucker, the big play to Bowers down the field. I would have liked to seen that early. I don't know why they were waited on it until they were down, but they did. And you look at Aidan O'Connell. Let's talk about Aidan O'Connell first. 23 of 35, 340 yards, 2 touchdowns. Of course, he had the fumble at the end, but I'm not sure what happened there. And then the penalty changed from false start to formation, and they never showed us a replay. So I don't know what happened there. Again, the refereeing in the NFL continues to suck. But anyway, Aidan O'Connell, again, 340 yards, 2 touchdowns, 116 passer rating. He outperformed Patrick Mahomes. Murph, it's plain and simple. I'm not putting these guys in the same category because one guy's got 3 rings, but Mahomes 26 of 46, 306, 1 touchdown, a rating of 84. I thought Aidan O'Connell, coming right off an injury, hurried into. Now he might have taken another week, maybe if Gardner Minshew was there, who knows? But coming off that thumb, he didn't show any ill will. That thumb, he did have the normal Aidan O'Connell issues, which I'll save for another time. But man, he was tough under pressure. And he really, I thought, when he needed to make a big play, he did for the most part. At the end of the game, it didn't turn out that way, but really nice to see him keep that offense moving a little better and start to see some progress. That's what we've been asking for, right, Murph? Is some progress. And I thought today on Black Friday, we saw this offense at least look a little better. We'll talk about the running game in a second, but things started to fit a little better than what we saw earlier in the year.
Yeah, you got to give the kid credit, man. Considering where his NFL career started and where he's at now, and considering all the adversarial things that were working against him, whether it be injury or being on the road against the best team in football, those kinds of things. Like when you look at all the things that kind of like worked up against him, and he did well, and not only did well, but he excelled and was really cool and calm and collected under pressure. And I think that when we look at Raider quarterback play, there is a common line, and I'm not going to name anybody in particular, but for a very long time now, we've seen kind of skittish quarterback play.
Mm-hmm.
We saw it at a number 10, we saw it at a 15, we saw it at a 4. Like it or not, we've seen that. And I don't mean AOC 4. I mean that other guy. And so now, Aidan O'Connell I didn't get the feeling at all like he was out of control or that he was shaken or rattled, or even after bad plays. In the NFL, they tell you never too high, never too low. You're on to the next play. When something bad would happen, he just responded and went on and made the next play. I love the aggressiveness of his play. I love the idea that he was willing to take a shot. We've often criticized Raider quarterbacks of when you've got a one-on-one matchup with one of your better players, throw the ball up there. I go back to the year in 2016 when Derek had such a phenomenal year. What is he doing? It was Darren Waller. It was Andre Holmes. It was Michael Crabtree. It was 50-50 balls in the back of the end zone and everywhere else on the field because he was trusting his guys to go up and make a play. We haven't seen that out of Derek or anybody else in many, many years now. And so that idea that where you got players that are, instead of go ahead and putting the ball out there. And I'm not talking about, it's not an excuse for sloppy behavior on the field. I'm not just saying go out there and fling it around. But I am saying, though, is that if there's a tight window, but your guy's got an opportunity, same as the defender, give him a chance. Don't hang on to the ball too long and then break your collarbone. You know what I mean? And that's, again, I'm not trying to take a crap on other Raider quarterbacks, but that's what we didn't see today out of Aidan O'Connell. And look what happens.
Right.
We have a really, you know what I mean? A really well put together.
And Murph, I'll say this too. You saw things that Aidan O'Connell made throws today that Minshew just can't make, right? There's trade-offs with every position player you have, with every quarterback you have. You're going to have those trade-offs. And Aidan O'Connell has a good touch on the ball. He doesn't create with his feet. He did move around. He did what he can do. And again, this is the thing. A great performance by Aidan O'Connell today would not take any of that away from him. And I think it solidifies what I've always thought, which is this is a guy who can come in and spot win games for you as a really good backup and can have a long career in the NFL doing so. And I think that, again, more experience, some stability, he can continue to do that. And I would hope the Raiders keep a hold of him as they look at a quarterback for next year. But I look at the connection he had to Brock Bowers. Ready for this? 10 catches, 140 yards, targeted 14 times. Great. Jacoby Myers, another guy Mo and I talked about this week, we thought was going to have a big game against the Chiefs. 6 catches, 97 yards. Trey Tucker, of course, had the one for 58 and a touchdown. And even DJ Turner, before getting hurt, had 25 yards on a catch. So we saw him distribute. That's the other thing I like about Aidan O'Connell at the helm, is that he does distribute the ball very well. He gets it around, and to me, that's good, because he's checking down. Too often with Minshew, what you'd see is first read, second read, and balls out, right? He wouldn't even go to the third read, which might be a better pass and a better opportunity for him, which is why I think he created so many turnovers. But I think what you saw today was, man, if the Raiders can gel, get the right quarterback, continue to work on the offensive line, which, yes, Jackson Powers-Johnson had the snap at the end. He had a couple penalties, but DJ Glaze had a very, very good game against that tough Chiefs front. Things look bright here. And I'm not just saying this because the Chiefs won and the Raiders lost again, because I know people out there want to get that high draft pick. The Raiders are now number 2, by the way, after today's loss. But to me, Murph, this is the kind of thing that I've been saying. It's like, when you're in a season like this, look for development, look for little things that say, hey, this is good for this team next year when you start fixing things. And sure enough, I think we saw that on offense today. We'll get to the kicking and the defense later, but I really saw some improvement there. Is it enough? No, but it's going in the right direction.
Well, that's one of the things that we've commented on too often on Raiders Fan Radio, is that name us an area aside from individual performance, and you mentioned a couple of them there, Brock Bowers and JPJ. Give us something that this Raiders team has been better at than they were in week 2, when we were all riding high because we beat the Baltimore Ravens. It's been a slow downhill race to regression, a race of regression ever since then. And so we've been saying, like, for those that want to remain positive about Antonio Pierce or the state of the Raiders, or having, the same group of guys get the same opportunities next year, with a different quarterback, whatever, that's fine. But show us the things that have gotten better. And the answer to that question is really very little outside of said handful of individual performances, which frankly doesn't really have a ton to do with the overriding coaching staff. That's more a testament to that individual. So all that said, today, we finally saw, as The Rock would say, we finally saw something get better. The running game. There's like an easy one to point to. You know what I mean? Because that's not an individual performance. You got to have all 5 guys on the offensive line and your running back and probably a tight end or 2, and maybe even your wide receivers, a guy like Jacoby Myers, who's a notorious blocker. All that stuff has to function. That's more of a function of the entirety of the offense and not the function of one individual like Brock Bowers going up and freaking catching that ball like that's a highlight for the year right there. But that's individual performance. This was not. Running game was not. And so I got to give credit, man. When Antonio Pierce came out this week and he said, we need to be running the ball more often, and a lot of us are sitting back going like, well, wait a minute. You're the boss. Like, can't you just tell your people to call more running plays? Like, why are you not able to run the ball more often? Or is it that you've been trying to run the ball more often and you just can't? Like, what is the hiccup there? Well, whatever it was, they figured it out, because they did it very well today against a pretty stacked Chiefs defensive line who definitely flashed today. Chris Jones is Chris Jones. Karlaftis is Karlaftis. Like those, the bigger names in this defense made the plays. Reed and Bolton and all those guys. But the idea that the Raiders were able to hang and improve, and not only, and to extend past the running game, Scott, very proficient in the passing game. And that's not only on Aidan O'Connell, that's on Scott Turner and Norv. Shout out Norval Turner, for crying out loud. You know what I mean? On being a little more aggressive on calling plays, and then those guys, and then receivers to get open downfield.
Yeah, no, I agree with you 100%. Listen, I think that's what you take away. And again, I said towards the end of the game, when the whole hubbub over the last play and them fumbling the ball away, I said, look, bad teams, this just happens to bad teams. And that doesn't mean that bad teams don't play good at times. And I think that the Raiders, look, you are who your record says you are. That's who you are. You're 2-10. Okay. But like you said, there was positives to take away from that offense. And again, Aidan O'Connell, just great. You talked about the running game. We're going to talk about the running game when we come back from our first break, as we break, because the show will be on the radio tomorrow as well. So we got to take 2 breaks. Our video audience, you'll stay with us. But nonetheless, I think that it shows too that, yes, the progression and moving away from Luke Getsy was the right choice. It took a couple weeks to see what we saw, but they played a good team today and they performed really well offensively. We'll get into the running game. We'll talk about Sincere McCormick making the most out of his opportunity, as well as Amir Abdullah continuing to play a great role despite the fact that the Raiders are missing their top 2 running backs. So we're going to get to that in a minute. We're going to take that break. This is Silver and Black Today, an Odyssey Sports Original podcast. Also heard on 101.5 KDAWN in Las Vegas on the radio, as well as 98.5 The Bet. Video always brought to you by our good friends at BetUS. Make sure you check them out. YouTube 150 is the code to get 150% deposit bonus up to $2,000. We're stepping aside. When we come back, Murph and I will talk about that running game. Don't go anywhere. All right, welcome back. Silver and Black Today, an Odyssey Sports Original podcast. Do us a favor. If you don't already subscribe to the show, please do so wherever you get your audio. Also, rate and review if you would. If you like to watch us on video, please do that as well. You can watch us on YouTube or any of the other streaming channels. We're there. Make sure you subscribe, hit that notifications bell, and give us a like if you would. We appreciate you showing us. Even if you don't like us, give us a like anyway. Just show us that you don't like us. That's cool. But anyway, we're here talking about the Raiders and, of course, their game on Black Friday against the Kansas City Chiefs, a game they dropped 19-17, a close game that the Raiders seemingly had the opportunity to win, and fumble the ball on a weird play at the end of the game. That penalty was changed. It's just odd. And Murph, I'm going to start with you. Murph from Raiders Fan Radio is with me, by the way. Follow him on x.com @_Murph, MURF. I am at LV Gully. The show is SNB Today. Murph, listen, I know a lot of people get upset, especially the Chiefs. Do they get favorable nation status with the referees? Absolutely, I believe that. I just do, even when they're not playing the Raiders. But that call at the end of the game, it switched from a false start to an illegal shift, right? And then the fumble happens because everybody else was going on that call except for Aidan O'Connell, who wasn't expecting the ball. He fumbles it, and the Chiefs grab it. But, man, the officiating, and I know we've talked about it, it's not worth talking a lot about, because until people stop watching the NFL because they're so disgusted, it's not going to change. And I think you saw another example. The broadcast didn't even show a replay of the supposed penalty.
Yeah, they called it an illegal backward pass.
Legal, yeah. I don't understand how that is.
I don't either. I don't understand the context of that either, Scott. But I think that I'll just speak because this is the fan segment, and I'm so to be able to represent Raider Nation here.
Please do.
We are not making light of the term, but we have PTSD when it comes to officiating, and it goes all the way back to the Heidi game. It goes back to the Immaculate Deception. It goes to the Rob Lytle non-fumble. It goes to the Tuck rule. There are so many opportunities in the history of the NFL that are confirmed that we got screwed over. Now, was that because there was one big giant conspiracy theory against the Raiders, or is that because Al Davis was suing the NFL, and because of that, there was a bitter taste in a lot of people's mouth about the Raiders and Al Davis, and so if there was a chance to pick a side, they were going to pick going against the Raiders? Or, you know what I'm saying? Like, so we are highly sensitive to this topic. All that said, this is not a hit job by the NFL to go get the Raiders. This was a 2-9 football team in this game. The Raiders got already 9 times. Ain't nobody trying to get them again. The Chiefs are 10-1. Losing this game isn't going to jeopardize their ability to win a Super Bowl. So, like, any of that, like, script people and all that kind of stuff, like, save me all that kind of stuff. Frankly, it's nonsense. That said, officiating in the NFL this year has been terrible. I've used different language if we weren't live on the radio, and thank you to everybody in Las Vegas for tuning in. But the officiating in the league this year has just been bad, and it's been bad in college football. Well, but when it comes to the NFL, Scott, I've pounded the table for a million years. The idea that you have a multi-billion-dollar now global league, an organization, a business that has so much resources. Why don't you have full-time officials? There's zero excuse for that in my book. And then you do finally have these senior officials that are good at what they do. Dean Blandino, Mike Pereira, whatever. And then the NFL networks come in there or whatever networks come in there and steal them and put them in the booth. Like, we got to quit that. Like, the NFL, like, once, and the Chiefs, this is not the first time they've gotten nods. And
oh yeah,
it's been going on all year long. But now that said, too, Scott, there is a superstar scenario that comes into play, and it's been going on since you and I have both been watching sports, and we've been doing this for a long time. Michael Jordan got it, Kobe got it, LeBron gets it, Montana got it, Marino got it. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Tom Brady got it. Like, superstars of leagues get calls. That's always going to be a thing. The difference is that you have to be good enough to outpace that. And that's what the Raiders used to be able to do back in the time of the 70s and 80s, is that we would overcome those liabilities when it came to officiating.
Yeah, and I think that too. I mean, today we didn't see the favorable treatment for Mahomes particularly, right? Which we've seen, including his little jog to the sideline where he fakes it so he doesn't get hit because he always gets penalties on that. We saw him win the game last week on, by the way. So you didn't see that, but it's just inexplicable. It's just crazy how it continues, but it's going to continue until people stop watching, which is not going to happen. So you'll have to deal with it. And with the Raiders, even though the Raiders have had less penalties over the last couple of years, it still seems to come up at big times. And this was just a weird one. Despite the fact that he did it. By the way, I want to send a note out. We have our video audience, of course. For those of you listening on the radio, just got to say this. My good friend, my good paisan, Gianluca, is mad because I'm wearing a red hat. So those of you watching, I'm wearing my UNLV Rebels hat. My alma mater plays their in-state rival for a chance to go to the Mountain West Championship game to play Boise State, who, if they beat, they would have a outside chance of making it in the college football playoff. So, Gianluca, I love you, man. Deal with it. Okay, there we go. I love him. He's a great guy, but I'm sorry, man. It's my alma mater and they're red. I don't care if the Chiefs are red. I'm wearing the hat and you have to deal with it or you turn it off. Listen to
and shout out UNLV and also shout out Boise State and Ashton Jeanty had another monster game. And now today, Scott, with the Raiders, and as I'm going off topic about, and I'll shut up quick. Now with the Raiders picking so high and now the first and second round, there might be a world where we can get our quarterback at the top of the round and then trade back into the first and grab that young man. That would be incredible.
Yeah, and it's really interesting too, because you talked about, and I know we're getting a little aside here, but you talked about Gentry, and really there's only been two teams that have been able to contain him. And I say contain, meaning he gained less than 150 yards, by the way. And one of those was UNLV, because UNLV's defense is pretty solid. So it's going to be a fun game if my Rebels can get past the stinky SOBs from Reno, which is our in-state rival. So we'll have to see how that goes. But anyway, I want to get back to what you talked about before we went to the break, and that was the running game, because finally we saw, with the scheme change, getting away from Getsy's gap system, zone system, I should say, we saw Sincere McCormick, 12 carries, 64 yards, 5.3 average. That's key. Now, again, this is not Saquon Barkley type numbers, but for this Raiders team is the worst in the league in rushing the ball. And it came late. I was getting texts from people saying, what about, we heard Pierce talk about Sincere McCormick getting more carries, that he deserved them. And that first half, they didn't seem to do it. They were going to Abdullah a lot more, but then they got the ball to him. They started to wear down that defensive front of the Chiefs, and you saw them run the ball 22 times, right? So this was a pretty good balanced game. Abdullah averaged 3.9 yards, but you had McCormick with the long 17-yard gain. And he just, how you talked about Zamir White? I think it was last week, Murph. You said something to the effect of he just never really had that spark. I think with Sincere McCormick, here's a guy where I'm wondering, why didn't they notice this? I know he's on the practice squad, but this kid's got that pop and that spark that you see, and now might be the change in the scheme up front too. But I just thought, man, it would have been nice to see this kid way before we have.
Yeah, I mean, shout out UTSA for crying out loud.
Yep.
You know what I mean? Like another, a group of five school. Then that's where these running backs come from. You know what I mean? When you look at Chris Johnson, came from East Carolina, for crying out loud. Like you can find some good quarterbacks in later rounds, like you and Mo talked about on your last show. But yeah, shout out Sincere McCormick and the production that he had. And even Amir Abdullah had some production tonight too. But I think that at this point, your most productive running back is Sincere McCormick. And if he's for whatever reason gelling with that offensive line, then that's got to be probably the direction for the Raiders going forward. Should they choose to remain competitive for the rest of these games going out, I think that's the right move.
Yeah, and apology to our video audience. We've lost Murph's video, but we still got him coming through clear on audio, so we're good there. But yeah, and that's the thing. I mean, you have to look again. This whole point of the rest of the season. There he is. He's back. Here he is. Hey, all right. But the whole point of this, the rest of the season is to find out who you're going to keep as you move forward, whether it's with a new coach or not, whether it's obviously going to be with a new quarterback, hopefully. And you look at this and you start to say, okay, this is a guy who's playing his heart out. I'm not saying that you don't draft a running back because of him. Don't get me wrong. But it was very nice to see that, and very nice to see. I think the offense balanced a little more. There were still some hiccups. I thought they should go vertical and challenge earlier, because the Chiefs, as good as they are up front, they're not that great on the back end. They got injuries there. And I thought that Aidan O'Connell, with his arm, they would have more opportunities to go downfield. And when they started to, boy, it worked. It worked like a charm. So I think they need to do more of that. And to me, that was big. But running the ball and being able to establish that was huge for this team, because that's what they haven't been able to do. I mean, we saw against Denver last week, not able to do it. You look at them today, 116 yards rushing was their net. They held the Chiefs to 63 only. So they ran the ball well. And for the Raiders, okay. I mean, listen, there's a lot of teams out there running the ball much better, but I like the direction and I like what they're doing up front. And then you talked about earlier the offensive scheme and the play calling. I thought overall, look, there was very few times where I thought to myself, what are you calling that for? There were a couple times I still don't like handing the ball off in the shotgun to the running back. I don't understand why people in the NFL do it. I know they're smarter than I am. They've coached football more than I have, all that jazz. I just don't get it because it never seems to work. But besides that, Murph, you got, like you said, you got to give the Turners credit. I thought that overall they got better. I'm not saying they're great. I'm not crowning them anything. I'm just saying they got better. Oh, now we got you. Now we lost your audio, buddy. Hit that other switch. That's okay. That's the beauty of technology, is we've lost Murph's audio, but we'll get him back. We'll see if we can get him back and get his audio in a second here. But anyway, so I thought, look, the Turners, again, they're not gonna light the world on fire. I'm not in any way arguing here that they're going to have that as a situation where if Antonio Pierce retains his job, which I don't think he will, but if he does, I don't see the Turners being the long-term answer, and that's fine. But I do think you are someone who looks at it and says, hey, at least they're getting better. And again, that's what you hope for in a season where you're 2-10. Hey, Murph.
Hey, Scott. Sorry about that. Having a little
okay.
meltdown technology-wise over here.
That's
my bad.
Okay. We gotcha. But anyway, so that's how it is. And I think that this offense is doing what it can. It's doing the best that it can. And Murph, I just thought, again, watching Brock Bowers, let's just close out this segment talking about him, because to me, that is really, really just an amazing talent. And I can only imagine what it's going to be like when they get if they get this offense in the right situation, under the right coach, with the right quarterback. Boy, is this kid going to be special.
Yeah, he's absolutely incredible. And I saw a post earlier today on the X where somebody was saying that, why isn't Brock Bowers being considered for Offensive Rookie of the Year? And the answer to that question is that because he's not Jaden Daniels, Bo Nix, and he doesn't play quarterback, And so, plus I think that he's probably got to get into the end zone a little more often. Had a great touchdown today. Clearly, I mean, just the way that he fights to battle to get into the end zone is very impressive. And but there's, other than those very limiting factors, which is just a case for the NFL and the way that it's played nowadays, he's likely an Offensive Rookie of the Year candidate in other quarterback classes, if not coming on the heels of one of the best quarterback classes of recent history. He might, like if he were in this draft, you know what I'm saying, and then turned in those kind of numbers, he might be in that conversation. And so the idea that he's doing this now with lesser quarterback play, when people would talk about like the greatness of, I don't know, like pick the greatest, Jerry Rice or whoever it may be, and then we would compare that player to Timmy Brown, and then we as Raider fans are going, well, yeah, Timmy Brown did that with like Jay Schrader and and like whatever, you know what I mean? Like you go down the list of like I think Tim Brown caught a touchdown pass from like 17 different quarterbacks or something to that effect, whatever. Yeah. So, but you can still see the greatness of the player despite who the quarterback was. And then look what happens when you do give him, even at almost 40 years old, you give him an MVP like Rich Gannon, and all of a sudden Timmy Brown's, goes absolutely crazy. So that idea that potential is already there with a young man like Brock Bowers, and we still have questionable quarterback play, even as in spite of the inspired performance that we saw from AOC today, which was great. That's not taking away anything from him, but we haven't seen it game in, game out yet. We want to see it over a longer period of time. But so for Brock to already for Brock to already be at that level and growing, man, it's exciting. I put out a tweet or a post, whatever you call them nowadays, earlier, and I just said next year we're going to see a lot of 89 jerseys. Out next year, man, you're gonna kids are gonna be trick or treating as Brock Bowers with a receding hairline and a number 89, man.
Man, I'll tell you what, and yes, and I think he does still have a shot at Rookie of the Year. I think it would take Bo Nix to struggle down the stretch, which could very well happen, right? And yeah, exactly, because Raiders fans, again, it's a Broncos, so you would like to see that. So if that happens, then I think Brock Bowers jumps up, and it's not that he doesn't deserve it, period, right now, because I think consistently it's just quarterbacks. It's just like Heisman and stuff. These awards, they go to quarterbacks. They just go to quarterbacks. And right now, it's to me, it's number one is Nix, and number two is Bowers. Based on that, and I'd put Bowers first myself, but I think that's where Jaden Daniels has struggled as well. So I think he's fallen back down the ladder, if you will. But it's all good. So we're going to take our final break, by the way, and then we're going to come back. We'll talk a little bit about that defense. We'll also talk about coaching, right? Because there was some problems with time management, with game management in this game. We'll get into that as well. This is Silver and Black Today, an Odyssey Sports original podcast. And you can find us also on the radio on 101.5 KDAWN in Las Vegas. Video brought to you by our good friends at Bet US. If I can get it out, we're coming right back. Don't go anywhere. 3, 2, 1. We're back. It is time for the closing segment here, the home stretch on Silver and Black. Today, we are recapping the Raiders' 19-17 loss against the Chiefs on Black Friday. Yes, the Amazon game. It was a big deal. And the Raiders gave on a good show. Got to give it to them, but they lose. They move to 2-10. They are now 0-5. 0-5, Murph, in the AFC West. So they have one more chance, right, against the Chargers to not go winless in the AFC West. So it's going to come down to that.
So you're saying there's a chance?
Yeah, absolutely. Right? I mean, the way they played today, I'd like them against the Chargers. I don't think the Chargers are better than the Chiefs. The Chargers have done a lot better than people thought, but I don't think they have the same knack for winning a big game like the Chiefs do. When you saw the Chiefs do that, they pulled luck out of their backsides. The Chargers don't have that kind of luck. They're better. They have a good defense, very good defense, and a good quarterback, but I don't see them doing it. So I think the Raiders, look, that's going to be what I think this last game of the year, is it not?
Yeah. Oh yeah, it sure is. Yeah, we got the Saints in week 17, and then the Chargers to wrap it up in 18. And then listen, it's a division game, man. And what's the old adage, right? Like, doesn't matter what the records are when you're going in and playing a team that you play twice a year. And I think that certainly if we can put on the type of performance today that we did, where we can limit turnovers, those types of things, we can stop the other team in the red zone. You say you want to talk about defense. Like, that was one of the things that I think was definitely a highlight for this Raiders team in this game tonight, is that how many times do we see KC get in the red zone and end up kicking a field goal? Like, so that's good for the Raiders. When you do that against Justin Herbert and the Chargers, 100% you're going to have an opportunity to win that football game. And so that was definitely encouraging to see the Raiders like tighten up when they needed to. Unfortunately, is that we got to convert more in the red zone. Like, that's got to be our thing, right? You got to keep the ball going on third down. We got to convert on third downs. We got to put it in the end zone when we're in the red zone. We got to not turn the ball over, create turnovers, and then keep them from scoring in their red zone. But I think that was like the one piece today, Scott. If I had to pick on the Raiders defense as well as they played today, somebody go get us the ball. Strip sack.
Still can't do it. Yeah.
Enforce a fumble, like bat a pass down, and they were great today. And again, I'm not crapping on the guys, because I said that, folks that were getting on us about not being more positive. I'm like, well, then do something positive that we can talk about. You know what I mean? So today the Raiders did something positive, and so I'm not taking away from the positive things that happened today.
Yeah.
But think about this. If there's not you, Scott, but the proverbial you, if there's one turnover today, we win this game. One turnover. If we get one knockdown, freaking, one a batted pass, interception, whatever. You guys know what they are. One of those things, and this is a whole different ball game. One strip sack.
And listen, look, Clavon Chasen had a great game. I mean, he was. I mean, I joked he was delivering more than Amazon on Black Friday. He was doing really well. And of course, Max Crosby had another Max Crosby kind of day. Butler did really well as well, but Chase on a sack and a half as well. He led the team in that category. Carter had a sack as well. So you look at that, they got to Patrick Mahomes. They disrupted Patrick Mahomes. What they couldn't do, and this continues to be a problem for this team too. You talked about the lack of takeaways, is also third downs. They were 3 of 12 on third downs on offense, but the Chiefs were 7 of 16, 44%. They were over 50% most of the game. So giving up those third downs again continued to be an issue for the Raiders, but the takeaways definitely. And then, we got to talk about, because people still getting upset about talking about Antonio Pierce. And I wrote a piece this week that I just thought he's the wrong choice. And I don't think that moving forward, the Raiders should retain him after the season. That's not to say that he hasn't done. Look, he's made this team play hard, and they continue to play hard. So I don't have any problem with that. I give him all the credit in the world, because guys who lose the locker room can't do that. Antonio Pierce hasn't lost the locker room. That's never been his problem, nor it's what got him the job, as a matter of fact. But I saw again today the timeout situation towards the end of the game, where he got indecisive. He thought he was going to go for it on fourth, then he decides to take the field goal, which they miss. And Carlson had 2 missed field goals. People are getting on Carlson. Listen, we've gotten so immune to 50-plus yard field goals that when people miss 50-plus yard field goals, we forget how hard they are. And listen, Carlson just didn't make them. But that timeout, then the use of the timeouts right after, boy, that last drive when the Raiders unfortunately had that weird play and they fumbled the snap, you would have liked to have a timeout there. So I think, again, we've seen some tentativeness. You can't be a head coach. You got to make a call and go with it. And I thought that they were aggressive on offense at times, but then when you had situations where you maybe should have gone for it on 4th and 1, we've seen that all year with Antonio Pearson decision-making, and I think it came up again tonight.
Yeah, it definitely did. And listen, he got bailed out on that spot call too, because when the Raiders came up short on converting, instead of throwing the flag out there and challenging the spot on the field, he's complaining. I mean, he's yelling at the ref, but he's still got the flag in his pocket. So I'm curious to what the reluctance is there to go ahead and use that. And for those that would say, that when they finally did come back with a decent angle on the Amazon broadcast, you were like, well, they were short. Yeah, but then it would have allowed the Raiders some time. And I think that there's an importance to be said for that, is that, they didn't get into a good play. Now, you could put that on the quarterback, on the young quarterback. You could put that on the OC. You could put on, I don't care who you put it on. But what I will tell you is that with more time, there would have been a little more strategy that got employed there, because running a delayed handoff to Amir Abdullah between the tackles clearly was not the right answer. I think that there was an opportunity in there that, even in that situation, this is where, and I'm not trying to nitpick at Antonio Pierce, but I'm saying that, like a more seasoned coach, okay, let's pick the guy that's across the way from him today, Andy Reid. You think Andy Reid in that occasion isn't going to consider those factors in the moment, not afterwards? It's one thing for us to sit here on a post-game show and go, oh yeah, that guy should have done that easy peasy. But what makes great coaches great is that they know Bill Belichick, you think about all the great game managers of history in the NFL, they all knew what to do at the exact time. And that's what makes them great. You know what I mean? And so they would have considered all those factors and considered the idea that, okay, I'm going to challenge this. And even if I come up short, it gives my guys in the booth plenty of time to get us into our best short yardage play. What's our best 4th and 1 play, or 4th and less than a yard play? What's the one that we've been crushing it in practice and it's an absolute slam dunk? I promise you, it wasn't that one they were in. That was either something that was already in the huddle, or that was a panic call. And that's not in defense of the guys that did maybe make a panic call, but that definitely was not the best scenario for the Raiders. And it's all that cascades, domino effect, right? I tell my kids this all the time. It ain't about the one thing that you do. It's about the ripple effect, the domino effect. Like, what is all the rest of the things that happen as a result of that one decision? And that one decision to not throw a flag that resulted in, obviously, the downfall of the Raiders on that drive.
Yeah, and listen, again, I wanna say this clearly, that the Raiders didn't lose just because of Antonio Pierce's, I think, mismanagement of the game at times, because that wouldn't be fair to say that. That was not, again, his fault, nor has been the whole season. Again, Carlson makes one of those field goals, and that's what it was, a 2 point difference in the game. So they have 3 points, and suddenly you're talking about maybe a big upset win again on a big holiday like last year. So to me, that's the thin margin of how this things would go. But again, you kind of suck the life out of a room with decisions like that, and you just can't in the NFL. You have to be decisive. To be decisively wrong, fine. At least you're decisive. You say, hey, boom, go, right? And we saw with the Bears, right? Over Thanksgiving, guy gets fired the next day because he handled things so badly. Now, Pierce wasn't on that level today, of course, but you have to factor it in when you look at the entire season, and certainly it's been an issue through the entire season. And listen, again, I want to give the Raiders a lot of credit for how they performed today, and I know fans aren't going to be happy. Was the fact that this team didn't win, and you would have liked nothing more than to be sitting home on your holiday if you are home and seeing the Raiders upset the Chiefs again on the road would have been a great story. It didn't happen that way, but man, this team had a lot of fight in them, and I can appreciate that. They're professionals. They've acted like professionals when you see a lot of teams out there quitting. You really do on some of these coaches that got fired. So I give them all the credit in the world, and they made it entertaining. They made an entertaining game, and they made improvements in certain areas, and we'll see what they can do preparing for next week. Murph, before we get out of here, we got a couple minutes left before we wrap up this post game show. And thanks to everybody in the chat. It's been great, and we appreciate everybody being involved in this. But let everybody know, we always talk about on our YouTube channel, we have super chats. We've had a couple super chats today as well that I want to give a shout out to, and I will before we get off the air. But that all goes to the One Nation Foundation, the nonprofit that Murph and the gang there help facilitate. And so anytime you donate money here, but also I'd like to have Murph tell people about it, as he always does, and tell you how you can get involved, because it's that time of the year when we start giving. If you don't give all year round, that's fine. But if you give a couple times a year, you might want to think about doing it with the One Nation Foundation. Murph, tell them all about it.
Thank you, Scott. I appreciate those very kind words. And to the chat room, and they're calling me out on saying that Timmy Brown caught balls from Jeff Hostetler. I'm sorry, I meant Jeff George. But anyways, it happens when you speak on camera. So thank you, Scott, for the One Nation Foundation platform. That is our nonprofit that we formed when we realized that we could make some money with Raiders Fan Radio, which is our podcast that we do. And we go live at youtube.com/Raiders Fan Radio each and every Wednesday at 4 p.m. Pacific, 7 p.m. Eastern. And whether that's advertising dollars, merchandise sales, direct donations that we get from the amazing super chats, anything that we generate revenue with on our show, we give 100% of that away through the One Nation Foundation, and we give it to strictly Raiders-related charities. The two biggest entities that we give to are the Bolitnikoff Foundation, which is taking young women at risk of domestic violence and substance abuse and giving them not only safe spaces but rehabilitative services. And then we also give to the Raider Dad folks who are taking underprivileged kids to Raider games, not only giving them the opportunity to go and attend the game, but they're also giving them the opportunity to have a tailgate. They get swag, they get all kinds of great stuff just to really celebrate their young fandom, and they get to do it with their parental figures. So some great Raiders-related charities out there. Raider Nation, at the end of the day, regardless of what the team's record is, Raider Nation is undefeated. We uplift our communities and support one another better than anybody. And when we say La Familia, we mean that. And so that's what we hope that that the One Nation Foundation can be representative of, is the generosity of Raider Nation, and we can't do that without you. So all we would ask is that you just hit a like, hit a subscribe here at Silver and Black today, over at Raiders Fan Radio. Even if you can't support us monetarily, just share the word about the shows. Help us get that out there, because that generates advertising revenue. And we can't thank you enough. And thank you, Scott, for the platform.
Yeah, no, thank you. And thank you to Hooligan Nation Super Chat there over on your channel, $20. He says, happy Black Friday to the One Nation Foundation. So thank you for that, Hooligan. We appreciate that, as well as we appreciate all those people joining us. And thank you again for being with us on the show. We try to be here every post game. And Murph, we got a couple more weeks to go, right? So we're going to continue. Listen, I thought tonight there was a lot of positive. It wasn't the last few Raider games a wash. I would get on the air thinking, boy, this is gonna be tough to talk about. Like, what do you talk about? But I thought today there was a lot to like. Despite the fact, I think somebody said in the chat too that the Raiders wouldn't have lost their number 2 draft order if they had beat the Chiefs, and that's fine. Nobody on this show has been saying tank and tank and tank. No, you go out to try to win the games. They're professional athletes, and I would continue to think that they would go out and do that, as anybody I think who thinks logically would. But that's how it goes. But thank you. And Murph, I know we'll be with you guys on Wednesday when you're live, but I look forward to talking to you next time, my friend. Have a great rest of your holiday weekend, and we'll talk to you next week.
Absolutely. This team makes me drink, and so I'm going to go participate. Go Raiders!
Oh, I love it. There you go. There is Murph from Raiders Fan Radio. We appreciate, as always, big part of our post-game show. We love him being with us and have you being with us as well. Do us a favor. Make sure you subscribe to the show wherever you get your audio. Just look for Silver and Black today. And also do us a favor, rate and review. And if you're watching us on video, reminder, it's brought to you by the great folks at BetUS. At BetUS, guess what? I'm telling you guys, go get this. 150% sign-up bonus up to $2,000. It's free money. How do you turn down free money? If you're going to bet football or whatever else you're betting, why not get free money? Do that with BetUS. YouTube 150 is a promo code. YouTube 150. Start playing today. That's where Mo and I do it, and that's where we want you to do it. But we appreciate you guys being with us. We're going to be back on the podcast feed on Tuesday. So join us, myself and Mo Moten, my usual co-host, for that show. And for those of you listening to us on 101.5 KDON in Las Vegas on the radio, as well as 98.5 The Bet, we'll be back next Sunday. But also make sure you subscribe to the podcast feed. That way you can hear us all week long. Thanks again. Again, the Raiders, they lose 19-17 to the Chiefs on Black Friday. And we appreciate you guys being with us. Make it a great rest of your holiday weekend. Happy Thanksgiving to all of you.